everybody. Welcome to the TST meeting. Today we're going to talk about some housekeeping issues. Specifically, the subject that came up of how many releases that in the past we should support ONOS releases. They came up in a context of the core release, which requires ONOS 1.8, even though we're currently in the midst of releasing 1.10. And also, clearly, what do we mean by support? Security issues, does it mean, what level of defects does it mean actually? And the second topic would be more tactical on how we figure out how to burn through the current backlog of code reviews that's accumulated. I think we have somewhere 150 plus code reviews. We should probably burn through.
170 or something.
Okay.
Thanks for that, Ian.
Yes. Okay. We have more than one. Okay. Anyway, so we can probably launch into the first one. Can I give that to you again to lead us up into the abyss?
First one?
Yeah.
Yes, the question I have is, right, is it one release, is it two?
So can we define support first, maybe, before talking about one or two releases?
Sounds good. Okay. What is support?
So, I mean, does support mean that we allow community members to check changes into the support branch, and that at some regular cadence we'll run a release process? Does support mean that we, meaning ON.Lab, or we meaning the TST, or we meaning the core team, or we meaning module owners, will be watching for bug fixes that may be relevant to backport? And like who is we? What does and what do we mean by?
So I would like to propose that if somebody in our community identifies a defect which is blocking up for some reason, let's say security or some sort of a
bug fix or something,
and they provide such a fix, right? Or if we decide that we actually want to fix it and they can't, then goes through a regular code review process, and sometimes down the line when sufficient number of sufficient criticality of these issues accumulate, we release a minor version of that release. But I think there needs to be some screening as to what goes in there. Because clearly we don't want to be introducing, large features. We don't want to be introducing large structural changes. Definitely nothing that changes the APIs. So
yeah, there's also a question there on if a community member submits fixes to an older release, how do we make sure that those fixes get included in all subsequent releases and the master branch? I think at the moment we don't really have a process around this, and often we have inconsistencies.
Okay, so in that case, there should probably be some level of burden on the submitter of the patch to make sure that this is ported forward, or at least make sure that somehow the same fix is ported forward. With the reviewers.
So, I mean, as far as making sure changes that are on old branches make it into new things, right? Like, it's possible, like a short Python script or something could be used to periodically check to see which changes are not in master that are in old branches. And we could just bother people with emails until they delete them automatically. No, I mean, the other question is, do module owners have submit rights on support branches? Is it a subset of module owners? We opened a can of worms.
I'd say we, right now, without certifying the module owner too much, I would say that they should, basically the area that they have ownership for should span across multiple branches, and then they need to exercise discretion and responsibility. And basically need to be familiar with what constraints apply to the support branches. That's what I would suggest, rather than creating another scheme of slicing, dicing things.
Okay, so that's, I mean, action item 1 is to put together a wiki page, right, probably, which is the, what changes do we allow?
Okay, so we're gonna put, so we're gonna, here's groups.
Yeah, describing what is acceptable and what's not.
Okay, how do we make sure changes are put forward? And here we should say basically modular owners.
So yeah, we can, yeah, basically put it on, that can be part of the process for putting stuff on the support branch. And the other question is like, you know, if you make a fix in 1.7, for example, does that fix need to show up in all subsequent support branches? Probably. And the master branch? Probably. If you make a change on master and you want to backport it to 1.8, do you also have to backport it to 1.9? Probably.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
just defining that, like, when you fix something, it's expected that bug gets fixed, you know, in the range.
I think the modular owners have responsibility, so the thing is, push it forward, but they don't have necessarily have the responsibility to pull it from master downwards, right? So if there's a fix on master, somebody decides they want to cherry pick it back basically onto a different branch, they clearly are then responsible to make sure that it's between that and if he supports the branch, if he supports the
Shouldn't they be responsible for cherry picking it back to the supported branches? Otherwise, we run into a gap.
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
So, shouldn't the module owners be responsible for, if fixes get on master, to also support what we officially support as the 1 or 2 releases? I mean, otherwise, we're going to have a gap in terms of the fixes, okay?
I mean, so
who's going to be responsible for making sure that those fixes get on the supported branches?
Oh, no, but so I think there are 2 things here. One is that it seems like you're implying that all bug fixes are gonna need to be backported.
yeah, they know.
And then what Thomas is saying is these bug fixes that do get backported would get backported only as far back as required by someone's explicit request.
Exactly. And but from that point on, they have to be everywhere. They basically have to be in every future.
But if the bug fix matches are, what type of changes do we allow criteria? They don't have to be?
No, they don't have to be. It has to be, I think it
So-
has
so
to be
what do we
pulled
mean
in.
by
It has to be
support?
pulled into the support branch. It has to be pulled into that branch by somebody specifically saying this defect is blocking me. We're gonna have defects in order releases.
So
The
what-
question is, are those requests posing security risks, or where we can proactively sort of push them there? But in many cases, let's say they're not security, but they're still could be blocking somebody. Unless they're blocking somebody, we shouldn't be pushing them. We should be pulling them from the master, or if we identify them for the first time in a support branch on some release, then we can fix them there and then push forward.
So what we're defining as supporting a previous release is security defects only, and anything else is only if it blocks someone who's actually using it.
Yeah, so I mean, what we can do is, here's where we can discuss this, right? The wiki page, you know, put together, but this is some example, right? Exactly, this could be proactive, and this could be more, yeah, exactly. Okay. And then here, the goal in here would be to
If you look at tracking these kind of changes properly, I think we should mandate before merging patches in, we should have associated either Jira ticket or something. Then we can see from the Jira which branch this thing went in and so on. So it'd be much easier to track. Where.
So we can add, we can say,
We're assuming that people are reporting things correctly in the Jira. We're assuming people are actually labeling things correctly in the Jira.
I mean,
even if they don't,
and
right?
Jira is not always tied right now. That's what I think.
Yeah, they're not, but I think we should make sure that they are, right?
And I think for the big issues that we've talked about, like generally backporting, they typically have Jira tickets.
I think they do. But I think we should probably state it explicitly as part of the rules.
Yeah.
So because sometimes we have people fix the defect, fix the defect, and then, you know, we don't want to just cherry pick it without paying a ticket.
Another sort of related thing is that name master branch. So when I go back in the history of the Garrett, and I see something was merged to master, but it's hard to tell, was this merged to 1.9 at the time, or was it 0.18 at the time, something? So why don't we just stop using the name master and always use the ONOS 1.0, whatever that version was we're using as a tip of it, just keep switching a tip when we roll over the thing. Then from the Garrett, it'll be clear that where that patch went, which version that thing went in. So when we cut the maintenance class 110, we would, instead of switching the master to 111, we create ONOS 111, and we start using that as effectively as master kind of thing. So I guess one counter to that would be that if someone decided like to leave a branch, like if someone for example took out the source code now, made a few changes or messed with it, and then we started the 111 release, they'd have to know to explicitly do a checkout of the new release. Otherwise, if they just did a checkout, they just would kind of dead end eventually.
I'm not sure.
So
I would rather provide, I would recognize that as an AD missing functionality, but for that, I could be provided by a tool. Provide a tool that's giving us this and change, you can figure out where it went to.
I mean, one thing you could do is you could just have like a little listener that looks for all the new patches and just put the comment in the history or something that says, this is the version that, or I don't know. But yeah, I see the challenge. You go look back in the history and you say,
yeah,
it's hard to,
it doesn't,
you
don't know. You can only tell by dates, basically.
And dates are not great.
No.
Because they have the author date, committer date.
Yeah, really, the only thing you can do is look for the tag that the build makes and see that it happened after. That's really the only way.
Which is what I was thinking, providing a tool that would exactly.
We could like, you know how Jenkins says like build successful? We could modify that message where it pulls out the version out of the version string and just writes it in.
Verify +1 would have information about which branch.
That's one way we could do it, right?
Well, as long as something we can maintain, right, on Jenkins when we do upgrades and stuff.
Yeah.
We don't want to customize Jenkins at the point, or Garrett at the point that then we have to worry every time we need to put a security patch for an update or whatever. So if it can be done as an extension or a plugin of Garrett or something like that, that's fine.
Are you specifically looking at Git or just Garrett?
Garrett. So,
I have a question. So let's say somebody who has reported about on 1.7, so you recommend them to use 1.8?
Right, so let's say, okay, so let's say we're on 110, and,
I'm sorry, but I'm just saying that let's say we are currently the master and this, the previous release was 1.5. And if somebody was using 1.7, and then they report a bug.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Well, that's, I think that's the second part of Yen's question, which is, how many releases do we support, right? I think in general, when people come to us and they report bugs, we should, like, our first line should be, can you move to master, right?
Or at least.
Or the last
Last
release,
branch.
right?
Yeah.
So in general, it's like, can you do that, right? That,
if it's fixed, if it's fixed in that release, right?
yes. Well, in general,
No, but in general, I
think
agree.
we should encourage people to move
Okay.
forward, right? And there may be some things that we as a project can help do to facilitate that type of moving, like, for example, like being better about backwards compatibility for APIs, maybe using semantic versioning, having some documentation that tells people, like, you should be able to move forward, platform's tested and the API hasn't changed. So, like, less scary perhaps, and also doesn't require them to do code changes or something. But I think in general, we should encourage people to, keep up to date, because it just makes merges easier. Now, yeah, especially when there's bugs or stuff that are fixed. But the question is, if someone says, for whatever reason, I can't move forward, then the question is, how many versions back do we support? And, like, to what extent? Like, for example, let's say you want to use 1.7, and you're willing to, like, make the change in 1.7 and port it into 1.8 and 1.9 or whatever, backport it from, say it was made in 1.9, backport it to 1.8 and 1.7. Then, will we, like, spin another revision of the release for you? I don't know, maybe if it's easy, if Jenkins can do it, then maybe it's trivial, click a button and you're done.
Yeah, I mean, assuming people want packages because, like it or not, but still most of the time people just use the repo, right? I'm not saying it's the right thing, but this means that you don't even have to create really a release. What we did in the past many times in deployments was that patches were going in the maintenance branch of old releases. People were just simply doing git pull and they were getting the patch. That let's then don't go inside the discussion if RGZ or a repository is a good thing for a production, but this is how it works, right?
No, good, so very minimum, we should certainly allow them to, I would think, if they're doing the work, we should allow them to submit those changes, and if those changes are reviewed, whether they're authored by them or whether they're cherry-picked, backported by them, we should allow them to go in, provided they meet the regular coding criteria. And now they're available in the code base, and they can do their own build. Now, whether or not we do the build for them, do the release for them, I think that will be the question that will be answered, how many releases back we do. I think we should only do the build for 2 releases back for now.
Is 2 releases sufficient? Because the kind of releases that we have right now is just 3 months. So
I would start there, because we don't have anything yet. The question is, yeah, a good question.
Well, so the thing, right, is that, it's still the case that, like, for every release up through probably this May release, we've always had to do the release manually, which means it takes, someone's time for, like, a few hours to get a release build done, right?
Presumably, it would also take some QA time, right?
And some QA time to validate, right? If we get to a point where the releases can be done in an entirely automated way, and it's a push button on Jenkins to do a release, then we could do releases whenever, right? Someone says, hey, I merged maybe every fix, we just do another dot revision or something, right?
yeah, I agree from our point of view, which is a little complicated to really then because it's cost effective for us. But I was thinking from the people, the users' point of view, if that 6-month period was good enough for them.
Well, so I think now if they didn't have a way of producing the bits themselves, I would say yeah, maybe, but they do have ways of producing the bits themselves, so they can just build them. And now they're working bits off of their support branch. They just don't have the official label on them. That's the only difference. So that's kind of an escape hatch, relief pressure valve.
Oh, okay. So until now, looking at the bugs that we have, so did we have like power down, like power zones, maybe?
We were using sort of we were using the kind of on-demand tools, stuff like, for example, when Luca, was running deployments with
Internet tool, whatever.
Exactly. We, the fixes were fixed there, and then we decide when we will do the release. Usually there was 1 or 2 releases back, even though we didn't really have an official policy. But I know we've done releases for 1.6 when we were working on 1.8 already.
Yeah, I think in general, I have to remember that we said that, I recall we said that we were going to support 2 releases, but then in reality we were able to support 1 back concretely. And most of the time we, even mainly for the needs of the deployments, we were porting back to the last stable release. So let's say we're working on master, we were just porting back to 1.9.
I mean, yeah.
Now, with this case of cord, it was a very particular case, right?
This is definitely different.
But in general, 99% of the time, this is what I remember.
I know that some of the, because Sienna was doing productization on 1.6.
Yeah.
And we were working on 1.8 already at one time, which is why I did.
Yeah.
And they were fixing stuff on 1.6, and we were letting things go through. And I'm pretty sure we kept maintenance, we kept support rates in that. So,
Well, so the other thing we could say, right, is, I mean, a lot of projects have what they call LTS stuff, right? So we could say that, once a year we do an LTS release, and that release we support for a year, and otherwise we'll support the most recent release. And
Yeah,
then-
but I think in that case it becomes more difficult, right? Because
And you
in
may
1
not-
year we might diverge a lot from.
yeah, my suggestion would be, let's just start modest, but somewhere concrete, right? 2 releases at 6 months. It seems like that should be reasonable, and then we can evolve from there. As part of expanding it to, let's say, a year or something like the LTS release. Part of doing that, clearly we need to make sure that the cost of doing the release is much more. Which is what Brian was doing.
Yeah. And plus also for QA, we should have a way to say, I don't know, the thing, change the branch and run again all the tests, right?
Exactly.
So
So let's, I propose we start with 2 releases as an official thing, which means if there's sufficient critical mass of fixes on the maintenance branch in the previous or the one before that release, we can decide to do a release.
So that would mean we do the cherry picks as bugs are fixed, and we do release builds as required, essentially.
yeah.
Which is sort of what we're doing now, just more ad hoc.
It's important that the security patches may be proactive, but then otherwise all the other defects should really be treated more as reactive and on-demand type stuff. We shouldn't be going and saying, well, this is a defect, I recognize it's also a defect in past 2 releases. That's not necessarily the reason to go push it back.
Sure, if it's a bug in the CLI, okay. Yeah, yes, we fixed it, but we don't have to go back and patch it. Yeah.
I think we're saying.
And there might be cases where we are not able at all to cherry pick necessarily the fix, right? If you look, for example, at the intent framework, I'm sure that
That's not happening. Yeah, that's.
I mean,
changes.
yeah, even if because
Yeah.
new compilers, new installers,
Yeah.
so compared to 2 releases ago, things are completely different, right?
Yeah.
So first, the bug might be there or not, who knows, in the older release. So someone should go and test it. Second thing, maybe the code is completely different. So that would mean probably, right, completely 2 different things.
Yeah.
It's not just readapting slightly the thing, right, and port it back. So I think we should just use the judgment and balance between the effort we need to put to write something and what is needed.
No, but I think we've scoped it down to very little, right? The security patch.
Yep. And again, this current one is difficult because we're fixing a lot of HA things.
Mhm.
And not only do we have this problem where 1.8 has diverged a lot, but there's also a lot of things that 1.8 needs, which I think that's also not the normal case. Hopefully this
It's almost done. We can start after that.
Sounds reasonable?
Mm-hmm.
It's not normal,
What is,
because from
what
a
is normal?
productization standpoint, this is not how it's done, but this is.
Well,
So
what
this
is
is not, this isn't a product, right?
I agree.
It's an open source project, and some of our partners have chose to productize it, right? And like, the thing is, like, if someone wants to pay us a support contract,
Well,
I'm
this is
happy
why-
to cherry pick all the
this is why
changes,
I'm
right?
not objecting,
But
it's very different from how we would traditionally do it, you know?
But I mean, ultimately, right? Like, you've got, it's an open source project. If you want support,
I agree. This is why I'm not pushing back.
okay.
I'm just commenting that from the policy would seem very different too.
Yeah, well, it seems, I mean, it doesn't seem dissimilar from what Apache Carrot is doing, but because they do have longer cycles, 30 cycles, but I think they also support them on previous.
I think it's bad. The previous is really more the only grabbing things on demand, right? Which is not how traditional productization organization of it.
I would start there. We should also include this, we already have a release page, we should just make sure that that page contains information. And so, okay, who put the release start on periodically? That's you, Brian? Okay.
I wrote that, but like, I mean, I don't know what we want to do for that, right? Like, if someone asks for one, do we always do one? Is there a quiet period, for example, like where we say after a change goes in, you know, a week or so after a change goes in, we trigger a release, or?
I would just rather, okay, well,
Because usually, right, like if someone for the security patches, right, like maybe periodically we do a release if there's been security patches recently. For the serious defects blocking deployments, like they're probably asking for them because they want them in.
then we.
And either they're in the condition Luca's saying, where they're going to build their own bits anyway, and they don't care if we do a release, or maybe they want to point their apps and stuff at release artifacts for the purposes
I
of
would
like.
just evaluate it, maybe set up some sort of a review process for it. Rather than trying to figure out the root, just evaluate it
Okay.
case by case basis.
So we'll document process by which a release is asked for. Something like that. Put that in. I don't know.
Right, so we should probably figure out who would drive the, so we need at least 2 different wiki page changes, right? We probably introduce one,
Do we?
or do we document it, do we just create a section on a wiki releases page?
You can just say past 2 releases and this is what is covered.
Okay, so let's just update, okay, so the action item would be to update the wiki releases page with the information we send.
The only other thing could be, do we have any sort of the module owners page, and making sure responsibility is understood.
Yeah, so
Just say people aren't scrabbling to be module owners. The releases are done periodically. We'll document process by which releases asked for by community. Are we saying what we're really documenting is we'll evaluate on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, yeah.
Who do you send an email to? All right, like, and it'll be evaluated on a thread.
Who do you send it to?
You send $100 to ray@ON.Lab.us and Venmo or PayPal, and you'll get your release within 24 hours.
Exactly. If you go for 200, it's 8 hours.
But no, I mean, yeah, we'll have probably just an email list that you make the request on, whether it's TST or maybe we make an ONOS releases mailing list or something. I don't know. Maybe they're already just one like that.
Oh yeah, we have also a release committee.
Yeah.
Mm.
The release,
Yeah, Bill.
reviewing committee.
Oh,
Officially built.
Yeah, so maybe we have that mailing list if you want to release.
Oh, please don't. He made me it, which means I don't want it.
What I mean, they can just send an email on ONOS discuss or ONOS dev, right? Whatever. I mean, why do we need to create another email that no one?
Let's just send it to the GST so people can actually.
Well, if you feel better, I can create an alias of ONOS dev, which is called ONOS release, which will anyway say.
Okay, I suggest we do GST and call it good. That's discussion.
Yeah, TST.
yeah, that sounds good to me. All right, and we covered that topic?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we can move on to the next one, which is, what do we do with the existing, backlog of code reviews? Well, I mean, the simple answer is review as many.
We do them.
But-
Yeah, exactly.
The thing is, there's a couple of different classes of them. If we were to take a look at the code reviews now. If you were to look at the back, portion of it, we've talked about in the past of going through the backlog of a lot of the ones in the back of the backlog to basically just abandon them.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these things are frankly destined for abandonment because they're a lot of -1s, even some -2s. Yeah, even though those are still
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to abandon stuff that's, we should set a time limit, 6 months or something like that, and just say, if there's no activity or no progress on it after that, just abandon it, because otherwise they just hang around and clog up Garrett.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, agree.
So Garrett has, just talking to Luca about this today. There is an auto abandon script or plugin.
Of course there is.
And the thing is,
I told him if you try to use it, I go blind. I give +2 to all the that framework patches.
So anyway, the point is that if a change is abandoned in Garrett, it's easy enough to click restore,
Yep.
right? So if it's something that you cared about or shouldn't have been abandoned, it's not like it's an irreversible thing. It'll just take it off the open patches and it'll go sit in the abandoned column, right? And if you want, you can start, and if you want to bring it back at some point in the future, like your work won't be disappeared. So I think if we installed that and just said, yeah, we're gonna run it, and it'll auto abandon patches that are more than, I don't know, 6 months old, 3 months old.
Well, frankly, we don't. Yeah.
I would say 2 releases, 6 months.
Yeah, I think that's good. The only point is just making sure it's communicated clearly so people don't feel like upset if their patch gets abandoned randomly. But if we have a clear policy in place, then yeah, there's no problem with that, I don't think. And like you say, it's easy enough to restore it if you want it back.
Yeah, the other thing is the plugin has the feature that when it abandons it, puts a message in. And so you can put something in the message which points to like wiki documentation about it, and you can say, your patch has been automatically abandoned. This doesn't mean we hate you. It just means that there has been inactivity on the patch set for the last 3 months. If you'd still like this patch to be considered, you can click the restore button and reach out to some reviewers to move things forward or something. I mean, yeah, I think having some communication so it doesn't look like their work's just being discarded is important, but, yeah.
So do we have patches that have the +1 from Jenkins that simply have never been reviewed by anyone?
Yeah.
Because that would be embarrassing, right? If we don't care about a patch for like 3-6 months, and it comes out that is our fault because we just never look at that patch, giving our opinion on it, and we also abandon it. That's not nice, right?
Who is we?
Well, whoever can do reviews, I mean,
Everybody.
anyone, right?
The team.
Like, for example, I randomly picked a patch. It's 9 weeks old. There's a guy who submitted something on Stats Manager and just never got reviewed.
Yep. Let's do submit. Done.
So I mean, the other thing we could do is we could go through patches that are more than a month old and send an email to the reviewers reminding them to look at it. And I don't know, like sending more emails is going to be helpful here, but
What I would suggest that before we start with the auto abandonment here, I would suggest we go through the backlog manually.
Yep, I agree.
And we can go in two different directions. We can go from top down in terms of the most recent ones or from the least recent ones. I suggest we have at least an approach towards the basically back end of the backlog, at least to force some cleaning there and just look at them and either do a review of it or provide an assessment of it, basically, one way or another, rather than neutral assessment. And then or if there is an outstanding feedback that the author didn't react to, then maybe ask a question saying, can this be abandoned? If it requires action, but no action was taken.
Should we also shorten the 6-month period for -2?
Do people do -2s?
Or -1 comments that don't get addressed in like 3 months? We shorten the period for -1s.
Yeah, possible, but for now, I would just suggest we go through it manually and decide on the policy for auto abandonment.
Yeah, plus I guess we saw today, we are in a very particular situation, right? Because we saw that like 100 patches, 80 patches are from the last 3 days.
yeah, like
I don't know if this is like a common thing or,
Well, so that's partly my fault, because I had to cherry pick 15 changes into 3 releases. So there you
So
go.
that's 45.
Do the math, yeah. So that's definitely an outlier. That was because we were trying to get all the HA fixes into 1.9 and 1.8.
But I think the ones that are near that have activity going on, that's something different, right? Clearly, they have
there's
activity going
activity,
on and they're moving, you don't necessarily need to get rid of them. It's just, I'm worried about the ones that are sort of like towards the tail end of it, merge conflicts.
yeah, exactly, even because merging all those things now, who knows, right?
Sometimes it's very difficult, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, because it's, yeah, I mean, you should probably look at the ones that are like before April. What's going on with the ones before March and
so
older?
when you say we should, who's that we?
Well, okay, the team, the community.
So
So
the thing is, yeah, I mean, I guess,
the modular owners, right?
well, yeah, so if we just say we, it's like nothing's gonna happen probably. It's gotta be, and maybe we can, like, I don't know.
Well, how many are we talking about?
So I was not right now focusing on who should do what,
Okay.
right? So
Okay.
right now is what should get done, and then we can figure out who's gonna do it.
Okay, fine.
My thought was, at least, there is probably like good 50 releases that we could, since there are March 31st and older, right? I mean, we're looking at it, right?
Okay.
That's right there. What do we do with those? And
Because I was gonna say, I don't mind taking those and making an initial cut and a recommendation for all of them. But 50 is a lot, that's gonna take a long time. So,
And then, I mean, clearly, I mean, here we could, we should divide the work between the module owners and super module owners.
yeah.
You're probably looking at like 50 patches that are older than.
But my suggestion here would be to first delegate it to the module owners, which is people who have the responsibility for specific areas. Because clearly super module owners could do it, but they're also also more loaded, right? So, super module owners then pick up what we don't have necessarily active module owners for.
Yeah.
One, yeah, and who's gonna do this separation?
Yeah, so that's a good question.
Or, you know, assign them in batches of 10 to random module owners and super module owners and just get a first cut.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or timelines, like,
We need to be able to run as a module owner offline and offline.
You can schedule jobs and stuff. Have it done.
I'm just talking about, you know, just giving it a set of batches and saying this is the person that should take it.
Yeah, that's what I wrote here. Automatically identify the most specific module owner.
Mhm.
And we already have a script to do that. When a patch gets generated, that's how we pick reviewers.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so you could just
Run it on.
run it in different conditions, or run it with, you know,
Okay.
run it as a job every day or
So
something.
that would be helpful anyway. That probably would be helpful with keeping pressure, sort of monitoring who's dropping the ball anyway, right? Not for punitive reasons, but purely just to make sure that things don't get left in this sort of state.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking along those lines too. Like, is it time to start thinking about some way we can try and automatically analyze these so patches don't get, you know, fall through the gaps and just get left there for months, even though they should have been reviewed?
Yeah, exactly, and that would be part of that.
I mean, it's possible we could ask Garrett to put together a weekly digest or something of patches that are old, like from last week, and who the most specific module owner is, in a link, and then people could just look at, oh, these are mine 5, let me look through these.
Sure, that would be one such mechanism.
I mean,
Remind things at least to bump things up.
Sometimes, yeah, just having like a periodic dashboard is easier to look at than try to keep up with the stream.
So it's great. There's one patch from June 8, 2016, last update, where the user asked us, by the way, is there anything I can do to move this patch forward besides fixing spaces and copyright issues? Is there anything else that needs some fixes or explanation?
updated 11 months ago.
Never replied. Yeah, this is.
Sent in the link.
Yeah, so I guess right now we don't sort of assign owners for every single patch, right? We you know, there are people have general ownership areas, and we kind of say you know, if you own some areas, you should look at these, but you know, we don't say that like every patch has to be looked at by anyone or by someone.
And shouldn't we also identify why they were not, like, reviewed, and then probably going forward?
Good luck. I don't know.
No, so shouldn't we also identify what, the first part of the.
And what is the cause for not being looked at, and then probably going forward?
Falling between, I think, figuratively fall between the cracks. That's an area of overlap where there's no clear designated module owners and super module owners where busy. It just gets forgotten, and if it gets beyond certain point, then.
Yeah.
David mentioned unvoting people who are module owners who don't meet their responsibilities, so.
Well, but they really don't. I don't think they.
I sign up for that?
Yeah, I don't think they have a responsibility, right? I mean, they're not paid by anyone. Being module owner, I think, is more certifying that a person has the knowledge on something, and if he or she has time, can help to provide a review. But
I mean, the knowing why is certainly important so that you can correct the behavior, but what do we do to correct the behavior? I mean, that's a good point. The thing is, if somebody, so I think the basis for unvoting somebody would be when they let something egregious in the code base. That might be the substance saying, what did you do? You didn't follow this process, and you let this code in and it jeopardized these things. That would be the basis. But if they don't pick up something, I think
So
we
how
got
are
the
you
point.
finding inactive module owners and then making sure that those get covered?
Yes, again,
Right?
Because some of them might not be even important then, if it is like 1 year, right?
well, I'm thinking generally that's probably going to be the case. Because it's not something that's critical or to sufficient number of people. Otherwise, there would be pressure or more ongoing, nagging, saying, hey, guys, review this for me, what's up?
I think all this, by the way, will really change when we separate things into different repositories with different people responsible and different rules to bring things in just in the core repository, right? So meaning that it would be difficult as it is now probably to bring in stuff in the core repository, which would be just smaller, while probably, as far as I understood, many applications will just live in other repositories where people there, they will have their responsibilities. So I'm saying maybe this list automatically will become just nothing.
No, for sure, but at least my point is this is more of a tactical, so we can certainly derive some strategic changes, but this is more of a tactical exercise right now. Just reuse this so that as we lead up to the K release, we are, don't have, anything, because the thing is, I'm primarily concerned, not necessarily about the size of the list, but about making sure that if we are serious about some of these changes to go in the K release, well, they should go in early enough for them to get tested absolutely, not at the last minute. That's the concern. And secondary is, can we change our behaviors or provide tools to make, such a spike, not a spike image.
So just a reminder, end of next week.
Yes, exactly. So, so maybe right now, just without sort of creating a upfront bottleneck for everybody, just at least if I ask all the module owners, we could probably send an email. I'll send an email out that asks all the module owners and super module owners to just take a glance through all of the old, which is basically March and older patches, and provide their assessment for the ones which they feel have the responsibility.
Can you also send the filter with the
Sure, I can do that. I can do that. And then, and at least that way it will sort of be, people will opportunistically pick them out. And we'll see what's left over beyond that. And then maybe we can provide some way to provide a tool to identify or digest, identify sort of idle topics, idle readings. And then after that, we can, do an automatic end of life. All right. So, I'm gonna send. So you say, okay, something. Oh, sorry. Whoops. Didn't bring all those stuff already here. I think that's it. That covers the second topic. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.